Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for MPI Chapter Virtual Education Session, Stretching Your Event Budget. We have a great cross-section of experts in the field today, and we hope you will leave with some creative ideas to help in your budget planning or presenting to your team, your boss, or your clients. We will be recording this session today for those that can't join us and add to our MPI archives. I am Terry Russell, your current MPI president of the BC chapter, and in my other job, I am the director of global accounts for Omni Hotels and Resorts. I would like to take this time to thank our valued sponsors and partners who help us in hosting events. Tourism Burnaby, Loungeworks, Helijet, BBW, Foster Walker Gifts of Distinction, Harlow Agency, ePly, mybadges.com, and Vision Event Photography. Just to note some of our upcoming events, we will be in person in November, focusing on wellness in the workplace. And in December, we'll be joining our industry colleagues for our hospitality holiday party. Dates and locations will soon be confirmed. We are also working with our sister chapters in the Washington State and Oregon for the Cascadia Conference taking place at the Semiahmoo Resort next March. Now on to today's topic, stretching your event budget. I have the pleasure of introducing you to three professionals in the field. First, we have Angie Pfeiffer, Vice President, IGM Corporate and Field Events. Angie has been leading the events team at IGM Financial for more than 3 decades. She leads a team of 8 event professionals that are responsible for live, virtual, and hybrid experiences, supporting education, leadership, and incentive conferences worldwide. Angie has been an active member of MPI since 1994, holding positions on the MPI Board of Directors, the Executive Committee, and Chairwoman of the MPI Board of Directors in 2007-2008. She has previously participated on many client advisory boards, including Tourism Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto, and currently serving on the Meetings Means Business Canada Board of Directors. When Angie isn't jetting off to another country, she can be found relaxing on the lake or blazing down the highway in her motorcycle. All the way from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Thank you, Angie, for joining us today. Next, we have Maurizio Priscino, who has been recently promoted to Executive Chef and Director of F&B Operations for the award-winning Vancouver Convention Center. Hailing from Southern Italy, Chef Maurizio discovered his passion for pastry arts at the early age of 12 when he started helping out at his family's pastry shops. From there, he went on to apprentice in some of Italy's finest patisseries before working internationally aboard Princess Cruise Lines. Since settling in Vancouver in 2004, Chef has worked with some of the Vancouver's top chefs and supported the next generation of pastry chefs at the Pacific Institute of Culinary Arts. Chef Maurizio enjoys working with his team, whom he describes as his big Italian family, on a wide range of events, whether it's a reception for 200 or a gala for 2,000. Their team is proud to create 5-star quality meals at the center's scratch kitchen. Chef hopes to have chickens again in his backyard in the near future and is very passionate about European butter. Thanks for taking the time to join us, Chef, today. We promise not to hold up your lunch service. Finally, all the way from Sonoma, California, Gigi Gleason, Director of Event Operations with Streamline Events out of San Francisco Bay Area. Gigi holds degrees in hospitality management and computer science. She has a broad international experience in corporate events and event technology. She prides herself in collaborating with her clients and colleagues to develop creative strategies and solutions for global meetings and events, venue strategy and selection, event logistics, programming, project management, reporting, and analytics. Gigi is a passionate dog mom, wine connoisseur, and owns some of the best handbags I've seen. Welcome again, and thank you. And to our audience, please put your questions in the chat and we'll address them a little later on. Here we are, we're closing up 2022, and let's just say this decade is unpacking many surprises with industry twists and turns. To kick off our discussion today, let's start with our chef. Chef, can you give us a quick update on some of the struggles you're experiencing with pricing and products and how the supply chain has changed how you budget for 2023?
First of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. As I say, let's start with the good news. The good news is our industry just come back, and it come back strong, actually come back faster than we were forecasting. But doing so also is challenging us with many, I will say, a little problem here and there. As everyone knows, now we start to really see the effect of the pandemic. So after we handled COVID, we start to have problems with the supply chain, the manufacturing cost. They are raising insanely. And we try to manage and still offer a great product. But also we have to be mindful of don't having I would say the bottom line and erosion on the bottom line. The majority of the problem that now we see, and we were taking for granted before, perhaps I would say the time when we place an order, and especially for items they are based outside, I would say, of British Columbia or Canada, never mind when you go down to the States or internationally. So everything is just a kind of a slow down a little bit. I would say, in general, the price of gas and oil, it put a lot of pressure on the transportation distribution, of this supply chain. The same things the labor market a little bit more stiff now. The price increases, so manufacturing a little bit. It has another, I would say, great increase there. But in general, what we saw right now is just this ripple effect of the costing raising. Recently, on September 1st, it came in effect, the increase from the Canadian Dairy Commission. So we got rather, because the price of a feed, the manufacturing labor increased up to 55%. So that this cost, they are a very much a huge cost to bear. So what we can do that we have to be on top of this I would say increase, and just have a great conversation with our client and disclosure to the client when it comes to increase the price. So one thing that I say, we have to be a little bit more creative, probably change the type of a meat that we'll have, the cut of meat. So perhaps if you will have a short rib, maybe you can have the same effect with the chuck flat, or maybe instead to have a ribeye, you will have a New York or a strip loin. So just be a little bit more creative to contain the cost there. It is a roller coaster, doing a new menu package for 2023, because we have this constant update with a price increase, and it seems like it doesn't really stop here right now. So what I say, for us, is just this might be the new for now what we have to work. So we just I say, the secret right now is the communication. Just be aware, be upfront, and just be creative. And most of the time, I would say, try to suggest the event planner what really they need. So more custom made, more tailor made. Do you really need that many items in a break? So maybe reduce a little bit the quantity. Instead of to have a water, maybe just have a water and hydration station, so it will be different. Just be mindful how many coffee you're gonna order. Most of the time, coffee for 800 people on a small break, maybe only 500 or 600 will go to a coffee station, because in that break, the people do want to check their email, using the restroom, chit chat, networking. So I say this a conversation. It's just an ongoing, but definitely our biggest problem, it was just how the supply chain is getting slow and slowly rebuilt. So it will be before, you say, that I'm passionate about my European butter, but now it starts to become extremely difficult because the shipping, so the high shipping cost. So you make sure before we will have a shipping every 3 months. Now you get every 6 months. just thinking all the specialty, like all the food that it comes from Europe right now is all on pause. And most of the time, unfortunately, there are only two ways to just manage this cost. Either the top line, and that will be your customer, or the bottom line, and that will be like the organization that he has to make like a new strategy, how to manage the cost, how keep the business going, and how to offer a competitive product. Because most of the time you want to stay in the market and you want to just contain your cost. Hopefully that like answer your question. Thank you.
And into that tune, I mean, obviously you've been very passionate about using local products. This probably helps the situation because you're more, you know, you're more able to promise a local product than you would be shipping something from another destination. Is that correct?
It is, yes, but also it has its caveat because going local, it will put a lot of pressure on the market, especially like I was saying, Vancouver, British Columbia. We don't have like this huge network in terms of like, you know, produce or produce. And so it makes a little bit more difficult. Actually, instead of to lower the price, he put the price a little bit like higher. So that desire to be more local, actually at this moment, it's quite challenged because the quantity, the supply chain is almost depleted. So the time they will go back on production, it will take a little bit and to establish that. Also, the price of gas in Vancouver, it's like a pretty high. We are $2 a liter. So even the delivery, like a company, they are cutting the delivery. They don't do any more PM delivery. If they don't do any more weekend delivery, they start to charge a delivery fee. So all these things that before you will not see in your invoice, now you start to have it, and that raises the cost. Also, one thing that is the labor, like to consider. When the pandemic happened, after a couple of months, each organization is start to like cut down on labor, try to contain the cost. But now, instead, they found it so difficult to rehire people. So that it's a little bit, I would say, like a problem right now to restaff like an organization and to make sure that the supply chain go back to pre-COVID, because the business actually is going back to a pre-COVID, but we are not that quite ready. Thank you.
And finally, Mauricio, we have a question about, do you guide your clients on an average percentage as a buffer to plan or budget for 2023? Is there a percentage that you're using to help?
Yes, correct. Thank you. Great question. That one. Today we receive like a weekly like update from our company, like on like the market, what is the increase. So we do right now. If I had to tell you what is the percentage increase on individual product, it will be like insane to just like a forecast, because right now we're paying like a beef between 20 and 25% increase, the dairy 12 to 15% increase. So I would say for an event planner, if you were like a plan like your event in 2020, right now you have to calculate at least a 10 to 15% increase on that line, and trying to be a little bit more creative there, how you're going to spend that money. I think like having a conversation, what you can do is the best things like there to contain that. But I will say a good 10, 15%, it will already, you can just put them there as a budget.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Angie, I'm sure what Chef has mentioned has probably kept you up at night. How are you educating your stakeholders on the situation?
Thanks, Terry, and good morning, everybody in BC. Nice to be with you all. So the title of this, Stretching Your Event Budget, is actually very appropriate because we're right in the middle of planning season right now. So corporately for us, September, October, November is building out your plans for next year, which includes building out your budgets for next year. So as you can imagine, listening to what we just heard from Mauricio, I mean, I'm coming in significantly. My 2023 plan is significantly over my 2022 now expected. So, you know, a lot of time right now is being spent on understanding the story behind that. What is driving that? How much of that is food and beverage? How much of that is foreign exchange? How much of that is attendance participation? So really digging into the numbers and understanding the stories behind there. And then another big part of that is educating our C-suite. So I've been engaged in more conversations with our executives. In fact, had a meeting with our CEO last week just to review my 2023 plan. And I put forward some recommendations on here's things we need to do in order to change the experience without diminishing the value, but reducing the cost. So to the end user, they don't really know it's changing because we're changing sort of the rules of the game, I'm going to say, but it's allowing us corporately to save some money. We're not able to come in flat. Like what we were spending in 2022 is not realistic to say that's what the plan is in 2023 without making some really tough decisions. So that's sort of the other thing I put on the table for our executives is, you know, if we need to come in flat, then we need to make some tough decisions on what are we not going to do. And by what are we not going to do, what events are we not going to do? It's not about not serving a meal. It's about, we need to save $300,000. So we're not going to do this event because we can't afford to do it. So it's been, it's not the first time I've been down this road. I've been in the industry quite a few years. But, you know, it's probably one of the more challenging times with the times that we're in right now. And I've never seen this sort of inflationary impact as we're seeing right now.
And have your attendees' expectations changed this year? And then obviously you said you're going to change the parameters, so they may not understand that it's going to change next year, but how do you balance the attendees' expectations?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because everything changed in March of 2020 in terms of expectations. So as we know, as an industry, everybody pivoted to virtual. And I think many, I might be generalizing, but many really didn't know how to do virtual meetings. Most of us have been working in a live environment. So we had to change their expectations just by moving from live to virtual. And unfortunately, we did a very good job of that. So the expectations were very, very high. Now, as we're going back into what we're calling a hybrid environment, we're sort of having to recalibrate again their expectations. So this year in 2022, for our premier, I'll call it sales and education conference, we delivered it in a purely hybrid experience. So the live experience, and we built a separate virtual experience. There was lots of integration points, lots of the same content, but you weren't seeing the exact same thing if you were watching virtually versus if you were watching live. And on a go forward for 2023, we're saying, you know what, that needs to become an on-demand offering. We can't really afford to create that same experience from a cost perspective, from a resource perspective. So some of the managing attendees' expectations is really communicating with them about what that expectation looks like and changing it so they can't really compare it. So that was sort of what I've said to the team is, let's not make it comparable. If you do the same thing you did the year before, it's easy to go, well, you did this last year and you're not doing that this year. But if you change the game, then it's hard to compare it the same. So that's sort of how we're managing attendee expectations.
That's a very good point. And Gigi, you had the pleasure to work with one of the top event design agencies. How are you balancing your customers' expectations?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Oh, I thought that was for me, sorry.
Well, the first thing I want to do is just kind of go back to the thought about how costs are increasing. There's certainly a lot of well-deserved scrutiny right now around event costs. What we're found, we did a benchmarking study of our own clients as well as checking with industry data and other economic data. And what we're seeing, if you look at the per attendee cost all in, it's about 25% higher than it was in 2019. And the expectation is that 2023 is going to be about 7% higher than that. And to break that down a little bit, eggs are up 80%, breakfast meats are up 50%, coffee's up 34%, dairy's up 15%, produce is up 9.3%. The ADR, or average daily rates for hotels in North America right now, is up 18.5% in 22 as compared to 2019, with another 8.2% expected in 2023. Airfares up like 48.5%, and that's going up. Meeting space Wi-Fi, it's up in some places 6 times over what it was for 2019 rates. So the pressure is definitely on in a big way. People are doing all kinds of things to kind of figure out, how do we manage that? Because even though I think everybody understands that, inflation is here, costs are higher, but they're looking at the 2019 budgets and they're like, okay, well, let's do the same thing. And no, we don't have a budget increase. So that cannot be done. It can't be done. And people are looking at all kinds of different ways, to manage this. One of the things that people are doing is just kind of really re-looking at, so what departments are really required to attend this meeting. So if you look at a sales kickoff, for example, one client we have, they're not including any marketing people in their sales kickoff this coming year. They're only including quota carrying staff. A lot of people are doing more internal bill backs for non-essentials to attend, like the sales kickoff or user conference or what have you. You can actually combine sometimes some of the meetings. So if you're having a larger meeting, you have people who are already traveling to that destination, can you add on those team meetings before and or after, so you're not flying people again and you can take advantage of what you're already doing. And then I think also, we're in a unique place right now, and I think we have a great opportunity to just kind of reinvent what we're doing again. So with the challenge of COVID, we all scrambled trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. And then everybody thought, oh, virtual is going to be so much less expensive than in person. And no, that didn't really pan out that way. And then there was the thought, oh my gosh, we've reached so many more people now, which is true, but as we've dug down into the data, we're asking ourselves, well, what is the behavior after the event? And are we driving the same type of behavior, right? So the magic about in-person events is really that you can create a vibe and a feeling. You're going to create those raving fans or get sales people excited to go beat their quotas and all of that. And if it's strictly content, you can do that virtually really well. So looking at your event portfolio and thinking about what are the things that are super content focused as opposed to a culture event, if you will. And if it's just content delivery, you can package that and you can deliver that, very well virtually. And then the things that are in person, do you still want a virtual experience, or are you cannibalizing your in-person teams to do that? So you just kind of have to look at all of that and really rethink, what is it that you're trying to accomplish with this meeting, and what set of things can we do that it's really going to drive those results, if that makes sense.
No, it completely makes sense. It's excellent points. And that kind of leads to my next question for you is, how have destination preferences changed, and what deciding factors may have been favored before, but are no longer part of the equation when your clients are looking at destinations?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really interesting things happening with respect to destinations as well. Through COVID, actually, there was super high demand in a lot of leisure destinations, resorts specifically, places where there were, outdoors and you're not, locked indoors with other people and germs and things like that. And that has actually really continued. We're seeing a lot of high demand kind of in those leisure and resort markets, including Vegas and Hawaii. And city demand is definitely coming back, but it's still lagging a bit behind 2019 from what we're seeing. Good news for Canada and every place other than the US. The US dollar right now is very high relative to other places. So we've even had one client that are pulling all of their events out of the United States and putting all of them international. So whether that's Canada, Europe, Asia Pacific region, but there's just a lot more buying power in other countries. And then, another thing that's been really tricky is that in these high demand destinations, transient rates are very high right now. And the demand is really high, obviously. So one thing we used to be able to count on is like for shoulder nights. Oh, well, we can just add a few shoulder nights here, a few shoulder nights there. And in some of these places, we're seeing those shoulder nights. I mean, we had one where it was a weekend in the wine country during harvest season. So, that's going to be high, but $2,500 a night. So you kind of need to rethink that too. Those we used to be able to take those shoulder nights for granted, and you just can't do that right now and maintain your costs. That's the balance.
And Angie, since you obviously do international events too, are you finding that you're trying to keep more in Canada because of the dollar?
Actually, we're not, because the ones that we are doing international are incentives, and that's really to drive sales. So we're continuing to do those internationally, but I do want to pick up on one of Gigi's points about, that's what I was talking about when I said changing the rules of the game. Like we did a refresh in one of our programs and we said, really, what is this about? If this is about education, and they can get education for $99.99 online, or they can get the CE credits through our IG University, does it really make sense for us to offer that? And no, we think it's more about culture and connection. So if that's our objectives, then let's now create that experience based on culture and connection. So to exactly what you were saying, Gigi, that's sort of what we're trying to follow on.
I love the I think it goes a lot to say like culture and connection. I really like that phrase and terminology. It really explains kind of what the deal is.
Well, and then it also sort of lends itself to the virtual, because then when I've been talking to executives, I said, if we all agree that it's about culture and connection, it's really hard to build culture and to do connection virtually. So do we really need a virtual offering, or is just an on-demand offering appropriate? And we need to really focus our energy on the live experience.
Yeah.
And it's definitely true. One of my other clients, they had hired 35,000 people during the pandemic. How do you build a culture and foster a culture when you have that many people that are hired, online? And you start to see it, because then there's follow-up. People aren't staying as long. It's great that you have this, big amount of people going to the tech sector, but then they don't feel connected. And so this is it's a very much a real problem. And we're encouraging from the hotel side to offer virtual opportunities after the event in order not to take away from the attendees, the room block, and the expectations that people will show up. So I do
Yeah.
think it's a great way to, help out if you couldn't figure out what session you wanted to go to, or, get people pumped up for the following year, but having it at the same time, and we've heard this from everyone, there's not enough resources internally to do both programming, live at the same time. So,
And I think people have a different people want it live. So if they're going to get it as an on-demand offering, they might not want to wait another week, right? That might drive them to go to the live event because they're like, I don't know if I want to wait. When I'm getting it at the same time, it's a very different expectation than when I got to wait a week to get the information.
Totally.
Gigi, I see one question because you brought up about the virtual Wi-Fi being 6 times as much. What's the justification that you're hearing for that reason?
Well, I think supply chain is valid, because a lot of the components and tech, those are definitely facing some challenges. I think one thing in all sectors, but particularly hospitality, is that when we used to be able to hire people for, relatively inexpensive, like we're looking for people so much that we really have to up, what we're paying people and the benefits we're offering and things like that. So that's certainly contributing. But then if you were to ask me personally, I would say that, there's some pretty big corners on the market. And when you have that scenario, it's going to cost the consumer more because they can do it. So they do.
It's true. And everyone's mentioned labor as being an issue. Is there any tricks that you've seen or that you're trying to, what you're trying to handle from a labor concern from your vendors in order to push your events across the line? And that's an open question for all three of you because we all deal with labor concerns.
Well, I can say that we're seeing staffing issues in all areas, and it's coming in 2 forms. So one is shortages, which are definitely getting better, but are still there. And then the other thing is just staff tenure. So lots of people have left the industry, and people coming in are not brand new from another hotel or expo company or what have you. Like they're brand new in the industry. So they really just don't have the experience. And also that even goes on the sales side. Trying to negotiate a contract right now is super challenging because you can't really get into a lot of the details in the same way with people who don't necessarily understand, why you would, attrition or cancellation or resell or whatever. Like they just don't know enough about it to have those in-depth conversations. We're seeing a lot of issues with production, decor, expo. One thing we've really been seeing a lot of is CSMs, they are some of the unsung heroes right now because they're in short supply. And I know hotels are bringing them on as quickly as they can, but bless their hearts, like they are running ragged. And so we're seeing, and it doesn't matter if it's like a mid-level property or a luxury property or what brand, but we're having a super hard time getting responses and being able to have the conversations and things like that, because they're working on what's coming in the door, 1 month out, 2 weeks out. And then like once it's kind of your turn and you're within that time period, like they're on it and they're doing a great job, but they're working really tirelessly and it's very difficult to plan around. And with some of the new people in the industry, like if you take, for example, a BEO where you have your dietary, your dietary things listed. If it was on the BEO, then you're accustomed to the little signage saying exactly what's on the BEO. But we're finding that, that's just one example, but we're having to check and recheck. And you just can't make the assumptions that just because it's on the BEO means that that's how it's going to show up. So that actually adds labor on our part as well, because there is more that has to be done. And we're also really rethinking, like we like to do like a lot of really special things, kind of off menu and things like that. But we're rethinking a lot of that now because of supply chain issues, and just, things aren't quite as well oiled and able to pivot as quickly as have been in the past. And then finally, I'd say that we're asking upfront from the CSMs when we meet with the chef, decor, any of those things. If you see any issues of what we're asking for in terms of being able to procure the items or being able to produce them or whatever the case may be, please, or if you run into issues, please let us know sooner rather than trying to fix it and then we can't find something. And so at the last minute, we have to make a change. So we're just asking our partners, let's just have these frank conversations up front and, let's figure that out together. Yeah.
Maurizio or Angie, did you want to add to that at all?
Yes, I can. Like I say, I just echo what Gigi said, like I just give an overview what really the situation now is with the labor market. I will add that especially like in British Columbia, when we had like an increase on the minimum wage, that create a ripple effect on any entry level position. So also there is like another thing to consider, like in the food and beverage industry, the student before the school, the hospitality schools, they will just like provide like, this great labor for any industry. So you can have a kitchen or a banquet operation filled with like, this 10, 20 students per time. Now that again, with the schools that were down, so they don't produce this kind of, so I would say the generation and people going out from the industry. So what are we missing now is the experience. So when it comes like your experience service, and we say, okay, tonight guys, we're doing this. So now you have to be more on detail. You have to overstaff, hoping that everyone will show up. So, and always, like I would say, it is expected right now, an underperforming kind of a situation. So I would say right now, especially in Vancouver, the situation it is like a little bit critical. And it's because when you have like this pressure and this much competition, you rise the price like consistently, because there is a huge demand, but the pool where you can grab that stuff, it's so small. Actually, before it was an ocean, it started to become a little lake. Now it's a pond. Now it's just your swimming pool. So it's pretty small right now. And that it put a lot of pressure. So I would say, but the majority of the stuff that I saw the difficulty on our operation, it will be that we lost that experience. That experience is built within time. So it's almost like you say, oh, you replace an apple with an apple. Yes, but there is a Granny Smith, there is a Gala apple. They're still like an apple, but different apples there. I would say that it will take a little bit a while. Also, many people that left the industry and they went, with the Amazon, the tech company and stuff. So that is again like a problem. But I see the things in like 6 months to 1 year when the school they start to get the intake and outtake like a student, it will get better. But right now, I would say that it's critical. And it's very difficult because we compete to each other. And also like this great package that you have to do, the hiring costs now, they start to become higher and higher, because as you know, in our industry, the turnover, it's like the biggest like a cost that we have during hiring. So we have to go very competitive, offer like an insane package, start with like, 4 weeks vacation, when before you will go by law with a 2 weeks vacation standard, perks. So you have to put there many perks. Not anymore. No one is attracted anymore by having the lunch or the uniform wash. That it's like, okay, what are you gonna do for me? I was on a call with another company, and they were saying they were offering a Tesla, that you can use like a Tesla for a month. Like if you go like they have like they purchase a Tesla and they offer a new employee, you have 1 month on a usage of a Tesla. So that's why I say people, they start to be more creative, because the usual, like the traditional way to hiring people, it's not like the same. Also, the new people coming, like younger generation stuff, the first things they ask, it is true, how much vacation I have? Is it flexible? How many days can I work from home? So that's like a totally different. And as probably Angie just said, like, this is a new game, and you can play a new game with the old rules. So you have to adapt. And I think it's at a point when I have a conversation with the client, they say, okay, but before, I say, okay, we're talking about 2 different things. This is not, doesn't apply anymore. That before we were able to. Yes, unfortunately, we are not able now. So again, it's a tough conversation, because as like the question we say, why 6 times like the Wi-Fi will be? Some of the cost, I think, like some of the people just jump on the bandwagon and they just say, okay, let's increase everything across the board. It's justify, everyone is increasing. But actually, like on the F&B, like it's real, like what we see, because you're going out in a restaurant, you go to do your groceries, and you start to see that your bill, it's like constantly like 10 to 20% more than what you used to spend. So I will say, the shortage like of staff, it's probably one of the cause of why we see the price increase there, because we have to pay more to get actually less than we were getting.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I have seen some ideas from the hotel side that we often suggest to help with those things, like instead of room drops, offer a marketplace. Would be example reusing of space. I know most people like not to have the lunch or other breakout rooms, but that's a great way to help save on labor for hotels, which could save finances for customers. Less food. I mean, a lot of people, there's a lot of waste, right? I'm sure you see that, Chef. There's a lot of waste out there. There could be some better discussions on how to make it still look like it's a full reception buffet, but without throwing away food, because I think it all hurts all of us to sort of see that. Of course, we can donate as much as we can, but in general, I think you probably see a lot of over ordering. Is that correct?
I want to touch it right there, because that is one of the discussion that we're doing, like to say, to change the culture. I would say in the industry before, like the donation, it was looking like, oh, what a great things for the great cause, like and stuff. But I always suggest at the event before, like to the event planner, to say, let's start to contain the wastage before like the event. So like, do you really need like that buffet? Because what is that most of the time the people like run out one items at the buffet and the panic, everything, oh my God, we don't have like it's okay. Most of the time it's also cultural stuff. The buffet, when it looks like almost an abundance, lots of food, instead I say like, let's tailor down, study the demographic, what your group likes. Do you have any data from your previous event? Ask the facility if they have a wastage, like a report. We run perhaps our wastage report, so we are able to produce a data and suggest the customer, you know, it was a great idea, because most of the time the planner, he just like to order what they like, not what the attendees they might like, and or what they think they might like it. So we say like, okay, what is your demographic? What is your group? Where do they come from? Or, you know, this might be excessive. In half an hour, there's not physical the time to eat all that. Maybe just like reduce the quality. We saw perhaps like the dessert, that not many people right now, because of dietary preference and stuff, they eat lots of dessert. So maybe you can cut down already there. So what are we doing from our part to contain the cost and to make sure that you still have like a beautiful event and there is like a great quality on the F&B? We just reduce the quantity on ourselves, and we disclose that with the client. And most of the time, they are very happy that we find the creative way to make a successful event. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I know there's kind of in line with this is a question about any discussion around industry standard changes to venue in-house minimum spends. We can strategize for alternative menus and labor tactics that cannot get around minimum spends required for baseline venue rental. That's a big one. I think it is, again, as everyone says, it's a conversation with the venue. I think most of us are open to it. As Gigi kind of mentioned, there's a lot of junior people in our industry, so that's always a little difficult. But I think it's always great to sort of bring that up so that there's always a midpoint. Sometimes it's just too difficult. Maybe it's the menu that you want is not appropriate for that amount of people. I think that's sometimes where the problem gets into. People want a buffet for 10 people and it just doesn't make sense. So, but that is an interesting comment, Amber. I know we have another question in regards to.
Can I chime in on that real quick, Terry?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So one thing that I've always done with respect to for food and beverage minimums in particular is what I'm thinking. You know, lots of times, you know, people will just look like, okay, well, here's the minimum without looking at, like, I would always evaluate when I'm looking at a hotel for a piece of business. I will always evaluate like what the average cost of those meals are, like a buffet dinner, a plated dinner, buffet breakfast, what have you. And then I know those are always lowballed. So I'm always going to add, I think I usually add 25 to 30% to that cost. And then I can kind of calibrate to see, you know, because the way the hotels figure it out, they're not necessarily looking, oh, we have this many breakfasts, we have this many this. They're like, you know, for this size, you know, I need, you know, this much per head, basically. So really just making sure that the minimums line up with what the actual expected spend is going to be. And you can still have those conversations after the fact, of course, but much easier to have those conversations before the contract is spent. And if you can show, hey, according to what you're showing in CVent, you know, we're not going to be spending that much money, so we need a lower food and beverage minimum, as an example.
You're correct. I mean, now when we do sites on property, we have everybody and their brother there. They used to be just, you know, the salespeople, but we need the experts when you're coming for a planning meeting. I know there's some questions in regards to, you know, what is the reality of clients or someone like yourself, Angie, reusing somebody's audiovisual to help with load in, load out? I know I'm seeing it from a pressure point of view. People want 2 days to set up, 2 days to tear down. Is there any way most planners would want to work with the other companies? Sometimes there is some stuff that is similar, and I know there might be different companies, but is that a reality? We suggested a lot. I don't know how much it actually happens.
Yeah, I would say it's worth exploring. We've only been successful once in all the years that we've done it, because you obviously have your own needs. And those don't necessarily always match up with what the previous or post client coming in, but it's definitely worth exploring. I mean, it's also hard these days because I mean, there's not a lot of, if you're in Canada, you're very limited on your production partners, right? So your negotiation is quite limited, but your ability to maybe leverage back-to-back events might have some flexibility. But I mean, we're very custom in, we work with the same crew, they travel around the world with us. So from a crew perspective, that wouldn't change. From a sourcing of the actual equipment, there's possibilities there. What we have done is we sort of rethought again, you know, if you think about it from the client perspective, so the end user sitting in the audience, are they going to notice the difference if that's a Barco projector versus a Sanyo projector? No. So I've relied on our partners to say, you know, I have to bring the cost down, but I don't want the experience to change, or I want it to change minimally. And I don't want the end client to know that there's a change in that. And there's always a little bit of room on that. So that's sort of how we've approached some of that in terms of a production perspective. But leveraging with other clients, like I said, we've only been successful once on that front.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I've been just looking at the chat to see if there's any other questions on here. I know we're all trying to figure out how to make it all happen from what it used to be before, but I do appreciate your kind of like, let's pretend this is year one in event planning, and which is a great place to be, because maybe we can break the mold a little bit and do things differently. From a chapter's perspective, MPI, everyone's looking at what we did in 2018 for revenues. It's just not there anymore. So we need to be more strategic, a little bit just different in our approach, which it sounds like we're all in the same line and what we're experiencing. Before we close it out, is there anything else that you guys would like to contribute to this discussion? Because I want to be mindful of your time as well today.
I mean, I think I would echo a lot of what Gigi and Maurizio were saying around the industry and where we are as an industry and the talent we have in the industry and the experience. And I would say around, you know, trying to stretch your budget, you just really need to be creative, right? Like kind of take everything up, shake it upside down, let it all fall out. A few pieces might stick, and then you work from there and start to really be innovative about how you can change the experience. And on the minimum comment, we are currently negotiating for a year-end celebration for our employees in Toronto and Vancouver. Sorry, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Montreal. And we have gone back to the partner we're working with. We said, you know, you're way out of our budget. Like this just is not realistic. And so they actually worked with us to say, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? What if we change this? We can bring the numbers down. Would that work? You know, one of them was as simple as right now you're scheduling to do your event from 3 till 6. If we get you to do it from 1 till 4, we can turn over the room again and we can sell it out again. So we don't have to charge you as much. And I'm like, perfect. Let's put that on the table and let's propose that to the executives. I mean, you either want to do it within budget. So if you want to do it within budget, here's the parameters. And if you want to do it in the evening, then you need to give us more budget. So I think there's room. I think if it's a true partnership, then there's an opportunity there.
We'll just echo what
Go ahead.
Yes. And you say, like I say, like that communication, just like open up and just be upfront and just like say, this is what I have, this is what I would like to achieve. What can we do? Instead of like sometimes I would say, like I say, oh, I want to do this, but your price is this, and I don't have a budget. So instead of just like have a clear idea. First, what really you want to achieve from that event? What you really it's important for you? The focus. You really want to have like a full buffet with all that? No, probably you don't. Maybe just like your coffee break, you want to have just a cookie and a coffee, something to energize. You don't need the extra fruit and so on and so on. Instead, they just say, "This is my budget. I want to achieve this. What can we do together?" And always like our thing, like because there is an interest from the facility. Just like have your event and host your event. So I just say like a communication and be upfront is the best, like you go a long way. Thank you.
And yeah, I think my little closing points are just, you know, virtual is going to persist. But I think we're figuring out how to right size that. And what's the right combination of virtual and in-person and hybrid. For 2023, looks like costs are going to continue to rise, but not nearly as dramatically as they have risen, from 2019 to 2022. Labor shortages are probably going to continue, but also not as steeply, particularly as new people are coming into the industry and getting really trained. That's going to really solidify everything. And then finally, I think, budgets are just getting a lot of scrutiny right now, all the way up the leadership chain. So I think that calls on all of us to get super clear about what are our objectives for this event. What is it that we want to drive? And then if you have that clearly in your mind, you can craft an experience where you're weighing costs, quality, and quantity and getting that mix right.
That's excellent points. And I have a final question for all of you. A lot of the best athletes have a ritual or superstition. What is yours before you execute an event? Jeff.
I say that it's a toss. It's a hard, not really have a one. I always say the plan A, plan B. I always focus on a plan A. I say you just focus on one. What we execute, we plan it, and we just do the execution. Never had one. I'm not a big. Probably as an Italian person, I should have it, but I don't. Thank you.
Well, and I'm going to follow Maurizio because when I did play sports, I did actually have a ritual, but I don't actually in terms of the events either. It's no, I can't say there's an actual ritual. I think, what I look forward to is when the team gets together, everyone builds off that energy and then that's what really lights the fire and gets us all feeling great about what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I don't have any superstitious rituals either. It's just, trying to, in the lead up, trying to get as much sleep as I can, because then once things are going, you hit the ground, you're running, there's all the excitement and everything going on, and you just go. So yeah, I just go. I just feed off of that adrenaline and energy. Yeah.
Maybe the ritual is to wear flat shoes for no slippers for 3 or 4 days before you actually get to the event, because then you can't walk for about 3 days after the event.
Yeah.
Totally. Always wearing a jacket so you've got something for your, your phone, your business cards, money, right? You've got to have certain clothing and stuff. So thank you for that. We appreciate your time today. And on behalf of our sponsor, Foster Walker Gifts of Distinction, you'll be receiving a special thank you. And be on the lookout for our next event in November. Everyone, please have a safe and happy Halloween. And to anyone collecting CEU credits, make sure that your email address is also the one that you signed up with, so you can get the CEU credits for today's session. Thank you again to our speakers and everyone on the call. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.